So I'm here with Jon Cherry of Perpetual Resources. You were one of the keynotes here this morning. Welcome to the line, Jon.
I appreciate it. Appreciate being here and the invitation to speak today.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking before we got on air here, and you were talking about how much you enjoy the Q&A just because of where it goes. And I think that kind of ties into how we always are wanting to work together with teams of people, because teams can become unstoppable and very effective. And so that was pretty cool to hear what you were saying about the Q&A. But you're specifically, one of the things that I heard was you're involved in the Stibnite Gold Project. Did I say that right? Stibnite?
Yeah, the Stibnite Gold Project, it's owned by Perpetual Resources. It's the only reserve of mineable antimony in the country. Wow. And it's the antimony trisulfide that we have. This was mined back in World War II and the Korean War, and supplied the antimony trisulfide that goes into the primers for the munitions for the military. And with China controls about 80% of that, and then they recently implemented an export ban on antimony, all forms of antimony. And so now the military is very worried about where are they going to get the antimony trisulfide from, which is stibnite minerals, and that's antimony trisulfide. So the military was here before, produced about 90% of the antimony during World War II, and
wow,
about 50% of the tungsten. The military specifications for this product were developed at this site from that war effort, and it's kind of the stories kind of come full circle. The reason the mine was started back then, back in the war effort, was the country was getting its antimony from China back then. Japan put in a naval blockade and cut it off, and the country and the military decided we better find something within our own borders. And that was the genesis of the original stibnite deposit. That's how it started getting. That people poked around in the 1890s, but the big antimony and tungsten effort was during the war effort then.
That's crazy how full circle that. That's
circle,
legitimately full circle.
It is. And then after the war, we kind of offshored everything, and here we are again. And the military was relying on China to secure a lot of their antimony. China cut them off, and people remembered that there's still this reserve here. It wasn't all the way mined out. The economics are driven by gold, but the antimony is a very, very important byproduct from this project.
Yeah, I think that's something that people don't realize. Kind of even like we were talking earlier about the Q&A and team. It's like, yeah, the economics are driven by gold, but yet you're able to bring these other resources as well out of the ground while you're doing both.
It is. I mean, as I mentioned in my speech earlier, over the last decade or so, China has spent over $57 billion on their critical mineral strategy and securing their critical mineral supply. While the U.S. wasn't really doing much, we were outsourcing everything. Wow. And now there's been a recognition that we need to re-onshore our critical minerals, develop those in the country, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think, like, with what's going on with your project that's green lighted and whatnot, what is it that you think that the American people need to know about this industry and what's happening? Like when you talk about them for the military and whatnot, I think of like national defense. I think of economic growth. I mean, even just in, you said gold is driving things, but if you were to communicate something to those who might be listening, what is the most important thing for the American people to know about this industry and what you're doing?
I think there's a couple of things. First, specifically about our project, critical minerals are so important to the United States and to the military and our overall supply chain. And the fact that we've offshored everything, and now we find ourselves in the supply chain crises that continue to pop up. The understanding that we need to be able to take care of ourselves in the United States. So I think that's number one. That's really important. The other thing that I think is important is that responsible mining and protection of the environment are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
We can develop mines. We can do them safely. We can do them in a way that the reclamation and restoration puts things back to a very high level. I think some people maybe still think of miners as the old prospector with the donkey and the pickaxe, right?
Yeah.
Mining is very high tech today, very, very high tech. And this particular site, there's over 100 years of mining activities out on the site. Wow. They've never been, kind of cleaned up or restored. And what we've done on this project is we've actually incorporated the cleanup of the site into our mine plan itself. So the fact that we build a mine and properly reclaim and close the mine will actually result in a better situation for the environment than what's there today.
Wow. Wow. I think that's, you talk about that old prospector look. I think that's one thing that people just don't realize is not only the technology and whatnot, but how advanced mining has become, and how we can, I was talking with someone the other day about some of the waste piles in Minnesota, and how the iron that we want, there's more in those piles than what they were pulling out of the ground years and years ago. And the technology to be able to access that and get that. I think a lot of people think of mining as this dirty old thing, and it's like, it's not. And it's something that's essential for our way of life.
It's very high tech, and it's not just minerals, but I'll use that as an example. You know, everything that we use in our everyday life, and I play this game with college kids and high school kids all the time. I haven't lost yet. Tell me something that we use every single day that doesn't come out of the ground somewhere. Everything, it's either grown or it's mined, and throw petroleum extraction into the mining side, right? Everything that we use has to come out of the ground. It has to start somewhere. So the cell phones and the cars and the renewable energy, and I mean, I can go on and on. Antimony. I mean, we talked about the antimony trisulfide. We'll produce enough antimony to supply about 35% of the U.S. demand. The military only needs about 10% of that. The rest of that antimony will be turned into antimony metal or antimony trioxide. Antimony trioxide is the main ingredient in fire retardants.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's in fire retardants and night vision goggles and plastics and, you know, nuclear reactors and brake linings. I mean, I could go on and on, but it's used in a lot of different applications. And I think what happened, going back to what most people don't realize about mining, are the things they use every day. They don't understand all the pieces and parts that are in those things that they use, and where those things come from.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of the old, you know, I grew up on farms in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I can remember some of my friends and whatnot from like New York not realizing where milk actually comes from.
Exactly.
And it's kind of the same thing. And I'm not dissing anybody in that way. I'm just saying it's important for us to, one, tell the story so that people know, and two, it's important for people to seek that out and find that information. But if we're not putting it out there, then how would they know?
No, that's one thing that I think the industry needs to do a better job of, and they have been over the last several years. But we need to get the story out. We need to demonstrate that mining can be done safely in a way that's environmentally efficient, and that we can restore things, to where they were before, and that the products that we mine go into everything that we use every day.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have electricity and indoor plumbing if we didn't have mining.
Yeah. I have one more question. I know you're almost out of time. Very busy guy. But for you and your team, what is the why behind why you're doing this?
On this particular project, there's a couple of whys. One is, I'd say there's probably three. Number one, we love mining.
Yeah.
Right? I've been doing this for 36 years. Love mining. Somebody's got to do it. I'm one of the biggest advocates for mining. But
Come on.
But doing it in a way that everyone understands, that's safe and responsible. I'm an environmental engineer by training.
Come on.
So the opportunity to develop a mine, when I look at developing a mine, I actually tend to think about what do we want it to look like when we're done?
Yeah.
Then how do we develop a mine plan that will actually accomplish that end result that we want? And then we start the permitting and the designs to get us there. So I kind of think about it a little bit backwards. But we love mining. The national defense aspect of this particular project, there's a lot of patriotism involved in this for sure. And we love mining, and we think that it should be done here in the United States. We shouldn't offshore our supply chain. We need to take care of ourselves here in the country.
Agreed. Yeah, good deal. John, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for stepping up to the line.
Appreciate it.
Thank
you.
Well, Steve Donohue here with Greenlight. Am I saying that right, or is there more to the name? Greenlight?
Greenlight Metals, Inc.
Greenlight Metals, Inc. So we're here just to have a real and honest conversation about what they're doing. We're here at the Better in Our Backyard, Mining and Energy Expo here in Minnesota. And so it's really exciting. We were just talking about, how much fun it is to talk about the mining industry and what's going on. I guess, Steve, my question for you is, why is that? Why is it so exciting to talk about?
Well, first of all, thanks for interview
Absolutely.
today. I'm happy to talk with you and your audience. So Greenlight, why there's so much excitement with mining in particular, and certainly with Greenlight Metals, is I think people recognize coming out of the pandemic and with all the geopolitical issues that are occurring in the economy and with national security, that the U.S. is in a pretty vulnerable position
Yes.
with regards to securing critical metals, whether that be things like copper, zinc. We heard about antimony earlier today. And there's a whole host of those that right now China controls.
Yeah.
And if the U.S. doesn't start responsibly developing its resources in a timely manner, we're going to be in a pickle. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of excitement around that, and that's what Greenlight is focused on. Greenlight is a recently formed junior mining company, listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange earlier this year. And the focus of the company is to look at exploration and development of resources in the adjacent state here to Minnesota, and that's Wisconsin, where we're focused on the Wisconsin Greenstone Belt, also called the Pinocchian Volcanic Belt. It's one of the largest undeveloped greenstone belts in the world, with a lot of historic drilling that's been done on that. And so we're picking up some of those assets, and we're going to be looking at aggregating those into future development.
It really is amazing to me how many resources we have in the United States of America.
It's amazing.
It is fascinating to me, and honestly, it gives me a sense of security if we can get them out of the ground.
That's right. The U.S. is really blessed with having the East Coast, the West Coast, so oceans on both sides of the country, great agricultural lands, oil and gas, and then plenty of metallic minerals. And that's what you need to have a modern economy, and that's what we need to be able to defend ourselves. So.
Well, and you talk about, Greenlight, which I love the name. It's like they're prophesying what they want to happen.
That's right. That's right. We want to get the projects greenlighted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's something that's important to talk about. Is you're in the beginning stages of that. As we are talking here, and as people are learning more and more, myself in particular, but I've been involved with Better in Our Backyard for about a year now, and I've learned a lot about mining that I didn't know.
Sure.
And I think a lot of Americans are learning that as well. And the time in which it takes to do this stuff, it's like you have to be a legacy thinker if you're a miner. You
That's
have to
right.
be strong in the way that you approach things. And I guess my question for you is, what is the level of endurance that you need to have in what it is that you and your team is doing?
Well, it's quite a bit. So, I've got 35 years experience in the mining industry. I sit on the board of directors for Greenlight Metals. I'm kind of the local representative of the company in Wisconsin, but my day job is with an engineering consulting company called Foth Infrastructure and Environment. And there I've spent 35 years principally focused on the front-end development of projects, which is environmental review, the EIS process, permitting, and then as we heard earlier today, kind of the final stage of permitting is litigation, so I've been involved in a lot of that stuff. So you have to be very strategic in terms of how you approach these projects, looking at the gauntlet of regulatory programs that you go through, look at the regulatory footprint, and importantly, factor that into everything you do, whether it's exploration, the engineering design of the project, how the project's going to be closed, all of that type of stuff. So it does take a lot of fortitude. It does take a lot of vision to do that. And hopefully what we're seeing happening now, we're certainly seeing this at the federal level, but just in society in general, is a recognition that we've got to do two things. We absolutely have to protect the environment. Everybody's all for that. But we can create a better regulatory process and structure, certainly at the federal level, to get these projects into production in a more timely fashion and lessen our risk economically and geostrategically as a country.
Yeah. Well, I think that you touch on something right there that is really important for people to know about Greenlight and the awareness that we're trying to bring to what you guys are doing is the fact that you have a team that is experienced, even though you're new.
That's right.
You guys all have the experience. It really strikes me how many people I talk to who were in some way in environmental engineering or whatnot, and now they're advocates in the mining industry.
That's right. That's right.
And it's one of those things that it's pretty fascinating to me is people who truly care about our environment care about mining.
Yeah, most people that I work with in the mining industry, I think at a core, they're also conservationists.
Mm-hmm.
So they tend to be outdoor people.
Absolutely.
They fish, they hike, they camp, they canoe, they hunt, etc. And they have a real passion for the environment and conservation. They also recognize that we have to develop these metals because we all have cell phones, we all drive cars. We just went through the pandemic where very rapidly the country developed a vaccine. Well, we wouldn't be able to develop that vaccine if it wasn't for the metals
Absolutely.
that come out of the ground. The plant that produced I believe it was the Pfizer vaccine is in southwest Michigan. It's a massive plant, and it's all metal. Okay?
Yeah.
So, whatever aspect of life you look at, we need metals. We need to do it responsibly. We need to do it with conservation in mind. One of the things I hear from folks that are opposed to projects is that, well, you can't mine safely. And that's simply not true. We've got many projects that have been mined safely, have very good environmental track records, and what it requires is engineering and science.
Yeah.
I like to say if we can design a rocket ship and put people on the moon, or design an exotic satellite to go out beyond the moon and look into the farthest reaches of space, that all requires metals.
Yeah.
If we can do that kind of science and engineering, we can certainly use science and engineering to responsibly develop a mining project. And that's the message that we have to get out to the public.
Absolutely. I think that is a message that the public needs to understand and we need to be aware of. And we need to be advocates just like you are to greenlight these projects, because there's national security that's involved. There is our environment that's involved. There's our future.
That's right.
That really is what it's about.
Yeah.
So for your project, what are some things that you want people to know about what it is that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we're in the very early stages of getting going in Wisconsin. We completed, company completed its first drill program this past summer. There'll be another drill program that's going to be taking place this winter. Still got to go through a couple permitting steps. But what we're trying to do with the public in Wisconsin is to have an open door policy at a very early stage. So we're just drilling. We have been meeting with local townships, local counties, local civic groups. In fact, we've got a town hall meeting coming up later this weekend where we're inviting the public in to get an update on our drill program. And every step of the way as we go through this process, we're going to be meeting with anybody that wants to talk to us, because we want to get local community input into how we eventually develop these assets in Wisconsin. Not only, so we can get an operation into production, but that there's a benefit and buy-in from the communities from the get-go.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, Steve, thank you so much for stepping up to the line and having this real and honest conversation about mining in America.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciated the discussion.
Good.
All right.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
You are the executive chairman of Guardian Metal Resources in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm really smart. I just read that off of his name tag. So, what is Guardian Metal Resources? What are you guys about?
Yeah, Guardian Metals. It's a great story, and I guess you would expect anybody representing their company to say that, but it's unique in the sense that we're actually a UK listed company. So our home office is technically London, England. Yeah, we the way the company came about was there's a publicly traded company on the AIM exchange, over there called Power Metal Resources. And Power Metals has a really interesting, unique business model in that they go around and they buy up assets, right? And then they essentially see what they can group together, what the similarities are, and then they spin it off. And so years ago, they grabbed a bunch of different assets, and our chief executive officer, Oliver Friesen, came in and he started putting packages together. He's an old geologist. And he said, I really like Nevada. And so we had some assets, the company had some assets in Nevada that he put together. And one started to come to the surface, and that was the Pilot Mountain project, which was a tungsten asset.
Okay.
And this is before tungsten ever became sort of in vogue, which
Isn't
it is.
Funny how those things happen.
Well, it
You
is.
don't even realize the value of some of the things that are in the ground.
Yeah, and it's cyclical. Right? I've been doing this for 20 years. I've worked on fertilizer projects. I've worked on industrial minerals projects. I've worked on precious metals projects and critical minerals projects. And if you were into rare earths 5 or 6 years ago, you're still kind of reaping the benefits of that. If you were into antimony a couple of years ago, that and now tungsten along with gallium and germanium are kind of it's the it thing.
For
and
sure.
and yes, we happen to be sitting on 2 projects that are old producing assets in Nevada. So Nevada used to be.
So your projects are actually producing now, or
They're not. That They were. So Pilot Mountain produced back for the war effort back in the 1940s. And then Tempaiute, which is a project we acquired or the rights to in January, last produced in the late 1980s, and it was owned by Union Carbide.
Okay.
And it was a direct provider to the Department of Defense.
Wow.
And then at that point, China flooded the market, as they often do, to weaponize materials, dropped the price of tungsten, and the mine essentially had to shut its doors.
So for the average person, talk to me a little bit, if you don't mind, about, because this is your industry, this is your expertise. When you talk about how China flooded the market, what does that do in our industry to those, like they were operating, now they're not, and you say China flooded the market back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. What happens when you say they flooded the market to the layperson? What does that mean? What are the consequences?
So they amped up production, and they sit on 80% of the world's deposits.
Okay.
Russia does the same thing. It is essentially like in the potash space, Russia and Belarus control all of the potash, or a lot of the potash. But what they do is a nation will amp up production, so they'll start to produce, near specific quantities that the mine can produce, and they start to flood the market. Well, traditionally, then what happens is the prices start to fall,
Right.
and the cost of production in the West versus the East is always. It becomes a situation where it's not sustainable. And companies might be able to sustain it for a month or a quarter or a couple of quarters, but on an annual basis,
Yeah.
it's a free market economy. So you're going to go where the commodity, if the quality is equal, you're going to go to the most cost-effective price point.
So when we talk about that, you say if the quality is equal. I remember one of my first businesses that I started, I learned very early on, and it cost me a lot of money, what the lowest qualified bid was. And you talk about it being equal. Is there more to the mineral or the product or even the organization that makes it equal or that gives it that quality? Do you understand where I'm going with the question?
I do. And look, when you talk mining, you talk upstream, right? So mining is as far upstream as you can get, and then as you float downstream, you get through the processing, and then more importantly, the refinement of an end product. So I'll use tungsten as an example. We don't have any current domestic tungsten production in the United States.
Zero.
Zero. None.
Wow.
84% of it is imported from China. The rest is imported from Russia. Wow. There's some stuff coming out of Korea. There's some stuff coming out of Bolivia, and a few.
We use tungsten quite a bit, don't we?
It's in more things than especially military applications. So a lot of armor-piercing munitions, that's a tungsten tip. If you take the shell of a battleship or a tank, that has tungsten armor plating. as part of it. So yeah, it's used pretty dramatically in our defense.
Wow.
It's also used in a lot of exploration. So cutting tools for oil and
Yeah.
gas drilling, that's all tungsten carbide. And so we're faced with a situation where we have no domestic production whatsoever, haven't for quite some time. But now in the United States, we're starting to understand the value of having our own supply chains. And
Yeah.
tungsten's really interesting in that there's plenty of processing here, right? So there's processing in your home state of Pennsylvania. We have a commercial relationship with a group that'll actually take our concentrate and create these advanced derivative products.
Wow.
But we have no upstream here in the United States, which is pretty interesting. But it also means that a solution is right around the corner for tungsten where it isn't around the corner for some of the other materials that are out there.
So talk to me about that solution. What does that look like, and what is Guardian bringing in that solution?
So we've got, as I mentioned, we've got two projects, both in the Walker Lane Belt in the state of Nevada, very mining friendly jurisdiction. And what we will do is we'll essentially take raw ore and you
Okay.
put it through a ball crusher so it gets crushed down, and then you essentially put it through a flotation loop. And that flotation loop is set up so that the concentrate, so the tungsten concentrate, which is WO3,
Yeah.
will come to the surface, and you essentially scrape that off. And then you'll send that to a Buffalo Tungsten out of Buffalo, New York, a GTP out of Towanda, Pennsylvania, who we have a commercial relationship with, and they will process it down to ammonium paratungstate. They will process it into...
Why am I not surprised you said Towanda? Because I know where that is, and it's a different place.
Yeah, never been, but I'm sure I'll visit at some point. And then they will ultimately process it into the product that is bought,
Okay.
right? And so the military, whether it's an oil and gas exploration company, they will end up processing it into the end product that the consumer will buy.
That sounds like a lot of jobs and a lot of economic impact across our country.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about our story is fusing sort of a mineral that is used not only in defense, but actually it does have a bit of a green angle to it. So the cutting tools for solar panels,
Yeah.
the cutting tools for wind turbines, that's all has a tungsten derivative or an input into it. So here we are bridging critical minerals in Nevada with a traditional coal petrochemical state like Pennsylvania, bringing a lot of jobs, a lot of economic stimulus to both of the areas. Mining underpins so many things that people just take for granted.
Yeah.
And we are now as a country just starting to scratch the surface of people, understanding that, hey, the products that go into your solar panels or your electric vehicles, that came out of the ground somewhere.
I do feel like we've been doing it backwards. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's like, so being an electrician, when I got my start, tungsten is involved a lot in electrical connections and things like that.
It's the filament in light bulbs.
Exactly. And it's like, it's a huge part of all of the things that we need for AI, for all of these things, and we don't realize how interconnected it is. And the reality is, if we want to be being more energy efficient, if we want to be doing these things, I've often not understood, like, I don't mind electric cars, but, if we're not doing the things for the grid to be able to handle them,
There's no point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
like, these are some of the things that I think really affect that. And we need to be paying more attention to, for sure.
Agreed. And on the kind of the coolness spectrum, let me go a little step further.
Absolutely.
So we commissioned a study. It was either late last year or early this year with the University of Oxford out of England, and they studied the input of tungsten in nuclear fusion. Right. So there's 5 fusion reactors around the world. And we often say internally that those who solve the fusion problem probably win the energy race.
Yeah.
But there are significant amounts of tungsten that go into the lining of each reactor. And that's just to construct the reactor. And then it has to be replaced over time. So one of the gating items on fusion is actually tungsten. And the fact of the matter is there's just not enough right now being produced at a quantity and a grade that can be used on a mass scale. So,
And we could be doing that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We could be doing it.
We could be doing that. Well, and that's fascinating to me because I'm involved with some different data centers projects are a
Sure.
big deal right now. And I literally was just talking with a company the other day, a manufacturing organization that's a part of building, it's going to sound crazy, but nuclear power for data centers.
Yeah.
And you're talking about that technology with what you're looking at with tungsten. It's like people don't realize, like, we're literally talking about miniature nuclear power plants for a facility, having its own dedicated power. And to what you said, it is solving that energy problem.
Well, there's a reason why Meta and Google or Alphabet are investing in nuclear power and power, generally speaking, because we just don't have it right now to power the data centers that we're going to be building or that we're in the process of building today.
Well, it takes
massive,
the ones that they're built. It's insane.
Yeah, it takes massive amounts of energy.
Yeah, and people don't realize how essential that is, and what happens if we run out of it here, then we don't have it here.
Yeah.
So you can build a data center, you can have AI, you can have Meta, you can have all these things that make life easier and better and more efficient, but you can't have it without tungsten.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tungsten is not the only item that's out there that we need for us to do X.
Yeah.
There is a long list of them.
And I'm assuming it's not the only item that you guys are going after either.
Well, it is primarily what
It
we're.
is?
Yeah, we do have some gallium in our deposit. We also have some zinc and some silver, which through our flotation system we'll be able to use as part of our revenue model. But yeah, we're pretty focused on being the one trick pony. But most importantly, we say that the reshoring of American tungsten goes through Guardian Metals.
Yeah.
And so we are laser focused on getting our two projects back into production, helping to restore some glory.
Well, you really have a unique situation where I've talked with a lot of different groups that are trying to get things off the ground, out of the ground, like you guys are. But your situation is very unique that you literally already have all these places here in the United States that you could automatically be sending your product to.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
Yeah, in fact, we had a commercial team, including our chief executive, that was at the ITIA conference in Helsinki about 3 weeks ago, which is the annual tungsten conference.
Wow.
And they tell me that the line is out the door with people saying, hey, can we talk about offtake? How do we line up supply? You guys have openly stated that you can be in production by the end of the current administration. We can't get our hands on scrap. We can't get our hands on any new material. Of course, China completely stopped any exports to the United States on the 4th of February. So it's an industry that is going to start to struggle. And then you mix in the U.S. government. Their strategic stockpile has been depleted, so they've got an open call out now for product as well. So you got to get the timing right, and the timing's really good for Guardian Metals right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sitting down and having this conversation with us, JT.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Helping people be aware of what's going on so that we can make a difference in our world today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, pleasure is all mine.
Thanks for stepping up.
Thanks again. You bet.